Well, we have the echo there. It's live, ladies and gentlemen, with Graphic Man and Paulo Costa, and we are going to be talking about Asterix comics. And Paulo is joining me from Portugal, so it's very late where he is. But we thank you for being here tonight, and it's still today for some of us here in America, but we're glad you can make it. We're going to be talking about Asterix. And if you haven't noticed by the funny pictures, he is a French cartoon comic strip, and he is worldwide famous, except he is not too well known in the United States. And that's what this episode tonight is hopefully going to help of the 100 or so people that watch my channel. Paulo, I'm going to start with a little bit of history. And it's a little French history, so it's 2,000 years ago. This was the leader of the Gauls, or what they called the French back then. His name is Vercingetorix, and I am hoping to pronounce that right. The last name ending with IX, and so Astrix and all his crew are based after the last ending of his name, the suffix. And here is that famous scene where Vercingetorix laid down his weaponry at the feet of Julius Caesar. And so in the Asterix series, they refer to this from time to time. And Asterix started in a magazine called Pilote. Am I pronouncing that right? Pilote? Pilote. And this is where I first came in contact with Asterix. In my high school, they made us take a year of foreign language, and so I chose French. And my teacher had this magazine, and I opened it up one day and I saw a rooster, but instead of crowing like I'm used to in the United States of cock-a-doodle-doo, it said what I think is pronounced cockaroo or words to that. Ah, okay. And I realized then that in other languages and other dialects, they listen to the same things we're listening to. They just kind of interpret them differently. And I was fascinated. Who are these people? And what are they doing? And every now and then there's a Roman soldier running around. And I realized, okay, these guys are 2,000 years ago. And they have little adventures. But he starts in, once again, Pilote magazine. And then I think this was 1959 or so. Then around 60 or 61, they say, hey, let's start putting some of these into an album.
Yeah.
And
that was the normal way of publishing comics in the French-speaking world at the time. First, they would be serialized in a magazine. If you published a page every week, by the end of the year, you had an album done.
Well,
so
fantastic.
You could get everything together, and you'd have a complete story that you could sell in bookstores. And that way, the comic would remain alive in perpetuity as long as it kept selling.
That is kind of like, I guess Tarzan 100 years ago is getting a start, or magazines, or having adventure titles, and then they become serialized. That's probably not the right term for it. Mm-hmm. But a little bit more history here to get us started. Of course, this is about 2,000 years ago, and Julius Caesar is trying to conquer most of Europe, and he conquers Gaul, which what we call France, except for one tiny little village, and they are the holdouts. They refuse to bend the knee to Julius Caesar. And so here's your cast of characters. You have Asterix, you have Obelix, his friend, and there's a little dog there. We'll get to him later. There's a druid named Getafix, and then there's a bard, the troubadour, named Caconifix, kind of like the word cacophony or something like that, with sound, and the chief Vital Statistics. Now, Paulo's going to tell you they have a little bit different sounding names in other languages, but this is how they translate it for us. I like the comic strip albums, and there's about 30 of them, but Asterix is so big that they've made cartoons and full actors playing movie roles about them. So there's your three characters: Asterix, Obelix, starring Gerard Depardieu, and the dog Dogmatix. But in France, he's called Idefix or
Idée fixe.
Idefix.
Idée fixe means a fixed idea.
Fixed idea. And here I kind of thought, well, there might be a little Latin in there, like Fido, which means faithful. That's an old dog name, but a fixed idea. All right. Well, we call him Dogmatix, which is kind of a play on words for being dogmatic. And we thank you to the people that are joining us now. Feel free to chime in. And here we go. Now, the first album. Oh, by the way, do you want to set up any of the characters? The reason they're able to hold out against the Romans, their druid mixes up a magic potion that gives them superhuman strength.
Yes.
And it lasts temporary, but Obelix, he's the guy carrying the big menhir. They call that a menhir. We call it an obelix here. He doesn't need any magic potion. He fell into the pot of magic potion when he was a baby, so he is always strong. And they're pretty much like supermen when they have that potion. And Caesar's army can't handle them, so what they do is they just surround them. There's about 4 garrisons or legions of soldiers surrounding that village, and they don't like it when those particular crazy Gauls, they leave. Do you want to talk about any of the characters in specific? What are your favorite ones? Or
well, Asterix and Obelix, they're always the main players in the story. Either there's a menace from outside that comes to the village and to disrupt their way of life, and they're the ones on the front lines. Asterix because he's the village's greatest warrior, and Obelix because he's permanently strong. Other times they leave the village and travel around France or even to other places in Europe. You'll find you were showing them going to England. They also go to Germany, to Greece. There's an album in Spain. They even go to Egypt, and in one of the albums they even go as far as India.
yes, we'll be showing those as we go. So the first strips that were made in the magazine, 1959, they make it to an album form, I believe in 1961. And here he is, Asterix the Gaul. Now, for the American audiences, this sets up the story, but I have to confess, I'm not too thrilled with the art at this point. But boy, does the art get really, really good. And yeah. I don't know if anyone else shares that opinion around the other countries, but it's got everything you need there. He saves the day, but the character in the background, Obelix, he is the comedy. He is pure joy to read, and he doesn't have much to do starting off, but it establishes the character. And sometimes getting started, to me, is the rough part. The second book is The Golden Sickle. The artwork is still a little bit, maybe not the greatest, but it sure will get a lot better.
Yeah, this cover isn't used anymore. When they reprint the album, they use a more modern cover where the characters are better designed with the way that they became solidified in the artist's mind.
By the way, I should point out to the audience that a lot of these books can still be found. I have a lot of the England prints, and they had beautiful full cover. Here's the one from India, but this one is the German edition, and that's my favorite cover in Switzerland. I have probably considered pretty good for an American, but I prefer those as opposed to the United States version. the picture is always smaller, and they have these giant titles here. Like, I need help. I'm a mile away in the newsstand to see the word Astrix. So there's the Switzerland copy. So you can see, I don't think they're as good as the England version, but anyway, all in all, there's about 30 of them. But I have those here in case we need to refer to any I don't have an image of. Their third album, here's where the art starts to get really, really good.
The story too.
Yes, they go to the Goths, and they're going to rescue their druid, Getafix. And this is where I think Obelix really starts to shine as the humor. Here they are. They've knocked out 2 Germans that are about their size, and they're wearing German costumes to run around so they can find their druid. And well, you'll notice so far we don't have the little dog, Idefix.
Yeah.
He's not one of the cast just yet, but he becomes very important as the stories go on. Next up is Asterix the Gladiator. And here's where the stories are just so hilariously funny, where he has to compete in the games. He teaches those poor slaves or gladiators how to resist the Romans, and everywhere they go, they make life real miserable for the Romans. Out of those beginnings, do you have any thoughts of your favorite parts so far?
Asterix and the Goths was one of the ones that I liked rereading. There were a lot of little details that made the story interesting. Now, the main component is of course humor, but it's like reading an old Karl Barks duck comic. You'll notice that the universe is very well crafted. That they make sure that they introduce a little bit of the culture of the places that they go to, and they even try to portray the language. Like the Goths have a Gothic type font in their dialogue. There's one joke in Asterix and the Goths that I like very much, because it shows us a little bit how Obelix is simple. When they have to cross the border, Asterix says to Obelix, "We go east to the land of the Visigoths." And are the Visigoths the Goths of the east? No, the Visigoths are the Goths of the west, but they're east in relation to us. Do you understand? No. And of course, there's a couple of jokes, because sometimes the Visigoths run into an Ostrogoth, and they kind of play the relationship between West Germany and East Germany there.
So here's one of those famous border crossings.
Yeah, the poor Roman soldier was. There's an invasion. There's an invasion.
It's 2 guys. Yeah.
Yes, the Germany is being invaded by the Gauls.
Tylox the Mighty. I hope I'm pronouncing Tylox correctly. He's asking, were these in newspaper comics? I don't know what's going on in Europe as far as newspaper. These are more magazine, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, they were. I explained in the beginning of the show before some people got here, so I think it's a good idea to explain it again. In European comics at the time, they were pre-published in a magazine, and then all of those pages would be collected and published as an album, which could be sold in bookstores and in supermarkets.
I'll show that again real quick for our viewers coming in.
Yeah, Pilote was actually started by René Goscinny, the writer of the Asterix comic, and that was actually the first real big French magazine, because even though there were French working in the industry, at the time it was mostly centered around Belgium. The 2 biggest French language magazines, Le Journal de Tintin and Spirou, were published in Belgium. So if you were from France and you needed to get a foothold in the comics industry, you had to go work at a Belgian company.
Okay.
And so they started Pilot, and they finally had one in France for made specifically for the French audience.
So for our viewers, this would be one page of the story in a magazine. And so each story is about what, 44
pages usually.
44 pages long. So is this a weekly magazine or
Yeah.
So it would take almost a year to get a complete story.
Yeah.
It's I don't know if I could wait that long in between pages. So
but in terms of quality control, these stories are not rushed in any way. If it takes you a week to produce a fully written, fully drawn, fully painted page. And since the French didn't have the same assembly line model of the American industry, the artist would have a lot more work to do than in American comics.
This particular viewer here, Christopher, he served in a United States military, and he was stationed over in Belgium, and that's where he was introduced to Astrix, and he is a fan. You may not realize it, but about 2 weeks ago, you were on the Gratu Orloff show, and the reason he asked you about Astrix is because I kept typing messages. Ask him what he thinks about Astrix, and so did Christopher once he saw that I was doing it. So between the two of us, we made it seem like a groundswell of people clamoring to find out what Paulo thinks of Astrix. So it might have only been 3 people in that whole chat that was probably real interested. But I'm glad he's here to see these. Now, we left off with the Goths. No, the Gladiator. Yeah. After that comes the Banquet. Now, here they've been challenged by the Romans. You're not supposed to leave that area we've got you confined in. So they take a whole tour all over France, gathering up items for a great big, we would call it a potluck here in America, a big feast. And along the way, these aren't going to be big enough for people to see, but along the way, there's a little bitty dog that follows them everywhere they go in France. And you don't really notice the dog because he's not part of the story. He's just often drawn very small in the bottom corners. Like if you look at the bottom left corner of this, you'll see him. He's following along after Asterix and Obelix. And even when they make it to a boat, he swims along with them and he rides along in the boat. And if you're just reading this and you're not paying attention, you'll miss the little dog because he's so small. And then finally, when they get back to the village, in the bottom middle panel there, Obelix finally notices the dog, pats him on the head. And of course, what the dog's really been wanting all this time is to get a treat. So he gets a bone, and that is the end of the whole story. And I think, you could correct me if I'm wrong, you might know the history of this more. I kind of think they were just going to use him as a one-time gag. And then they probably found out he looked pretty cute, very popular. Let's keep bringing him back. And then let's give him a name. Is that how you kind of see it? Or
yeah, the audience responded well to having the dog there. I'm not sure how much of a conscious decision it was when they first introduced him. It would definitely be a sort of a jab at Hergé and Tintin with his dog Snowy.
right.
But Pilot magazine then held a contest for the audience to name the dog, and that's how and they chose Idefix.
Well, he gets an honorable mention in the very next book, which was well drawn, Asterix and Cleopatra.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my copy there. It looks very very Egyptian, very. They made a upgraded version of that with pyramids in the background, but it's
Yeah.
basically the same three characters.
It's kind of a shame that they took out the all that text at the bottom, because it says
Right.
how much paper and ink they spent crafting it, and it's sort of a nod to how many actors Cecil B. DeMille used to have in his movies.
Yes. If you can read that or not, so many gallons of ink and beer and typewriters but very early in the story, there's the dog again, and this time he's got a name, and Obelix is going to teach this little dog to carry Meniere's, which is funny because a Meniere would crush anybody that's not super strong like him. And did you notice that Astrix has a wild boar, a dead wild boar? They hunt wild boar all through the woods, and it's the favorite meal of Obelix. He could eat about 5 in one sitting, I think, which is more than what in America we would call Jughead's appetite. But the little dog shows up, and so he makes it into the very next book. And of course, Obelix wants to take him on their adventure to Egypt, and Asterix doesn't think it's a good idea, but he sneaks him aboard. Then while they're there, Obelix climbs up the Sphinx and accidentally knocks the nose off. And so this is them trying to explain what happened. However, to quote another Frenchman, years later, Napoleon gets there, and he doesn't make any note about the nose being missing. So I think the nose just fell off much later. But if you want to talk about good artwork, Uderzo, and I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
That he could flat out draw, and he must have wore out his rulers, because when he draws villages and Rome and Paris, old Paris, he crams in all these little villages and roofs and buildings, and it's a marvel that he took the time to do that. Of course, if you only have to have one page a week, he's got plenty of time. But I would be so frustrated trying to attempt to do half of that. It wouldn't be worth looking at. Incredible artwork.
Those pages are bigger than a standard US size page.
Yes.
A regular French album page has about twice the storytelling of a US page. So a 44-page album is about the equivalent of a 4-issue miniseries when it comes to storytelling.
I agree. I'll have another example later on. Up next is Asterix and the Big Fight. And this one is full of comedy. And their druid, he gets knocked silly, and he can't remember how to make the magic formula. And so they really need that. And after that, Asterix goes to England. And so here's a cover showing a rugby match or ancient football. Now, Paulo knows what I'm going to say next. In the story, this Englishman named Brass Tacks, just as the French, their names all end with IX, they have the English having their names in AX, kind of like Union Jacks, JAX. But the Englishman sticks out his hand and wants to shake hands. Obelix shakes him too much because he said the word shake. So he tells the chief, whatever you do, don't shake him, even though he might ask you to shake. And that's not that hilarious a joke. But in the United States version, there's a different translation where I guess they realize, hey, we're dealing with a guy named Brass Tacks. Let's use that pun that says you should get down to brass tacks, which in America, that would mean let's get down to business. And since the chief is sitting high up on his throne there, he should get down to brass tacks. The pun works real well in America, but that's the only difference I could find in the English and the American version. And before we went live here, I was asking Paulo if they probably didn't even use that pun in the version he read. And by the way, you're reading the French version or something printed in Brazil, or
we have the Portuguese the Portuguese version. And when it comes to European comics, the Brazilians actually prefer our versions. Although Asterix was published in Brazil by Editora Record, but they prefer the versions that we had at Mediberica. I just have to take my antibiotic because I have a tooth infection.
Surely.
Sorry.
Well, up next is Asterix and the Normans. And my cover, I don't see where my book is, but mine, I've got one where he's got brown hair, that teenager. He has brown hair. And another version I have, he has blonde hair. So the colors couldn't make up their mind. And which is the Normans, which would be the Vikings to a lot of our viewers here. And this later became a cartoon. Parts of it became a cartoon, and then they added to the story. And I think they threw in some love interest, but I haven't seen the cartoon. I'm primarily interested in the comic albums because I love them. So go ahead.
A couple. First about the British, I have to explain something that one of the biggest sources of humor in the original French version does not translate at all to the English version because it has to do with grammar. Now, in English, the grammar is structured as the order is adjective, noun, and in Latin languages, it's noun, adjective. But brass tacks, or as we in the original, jolly thorax, he always speak. The dialogue is all in French, of course, but he speaks in an adjective noun order, like as you would expect from someone from Britain. So all of the joke, that's a source of humor because they also have a lot of idiomatic expressions which are literally translated. So in another language, it also seems funny because it's clunky, and now it doesn't actually mean the same thing anymore. And there's even one of the jokes is when he starts rubbing off on Obelix because when they're going to England, and he says, and Jolly Thorax says, une Romaine patrouille. And Obelix says, yes, it's a Romaine patrouille. I mean, a patrouille Romaine.
Oh, okay.
He's really starting to rub off on him.
Sure.
And he also has a lot to say about British cuisine because of what they do to the wild boars.
And there was an early appearance of the Beatles in there.
Yeah.
Four lads that 2,000 years ago that resembled the Beatles.
Yeah.
And the thing I noticed, they were always drinking warm water. And of course, later they would put leaves in it and make tea. So the British are well known for drinking tea. Up next is Asterix the Legionary. And that was hilarious because they have to join the Roman army to go looking for a friend of theirs. And everywhere they go, they make the Romans miserable. And just watching the Roman soldiers just become unglued is totally fantastic. And interrupt me if you want to jump in here.
Yeah, it's just that they have a lot of recruits from outside the empire. There are two goths, and then there's an Egyptian, and the Egyptian is actually a tourist. So he says, "Is this a spa?" And what the recruiter says to one of the legionnaires, "Yes," telling yes.
Yeah, he has no idea he's just signed up for the army.
Yeah,
the Roman army, and he thinks he's on holiday. He's running around enjoying the scenery and loving every minute of it.
I don't know how you translated the name. In French, it was court de tennis, tennis court.
Oh, yes, tennis court. Yeah. Here's a Sleepy Time Reader.
Hey, Damien.
You guys Where was I at? Yeah, I was at the Chieftain Shield. So some of you'll need to go back to the beginning to watch the beginning, but we talked about how the original leader of the Gauls, Vercingetorix, laid down his armor and his chieftain shield before the feet of Julius Caesar. And then so later they decide to go back to that idea. And for the chieftain shield, they want to locate that shield. And this causes a lot of hilarious jokes where they make fun of people going to spas and or people going to health clubs, and they have to enroll their chief into one. It turns out the shield that he stands on, is the old shield used by the original chief, Vercingetorix. And boy, his name is a mouthful for me. I'm an American. I love it, but it's hard to pronounce. Up next, the Asterix and the Cauldron. This was pretty good. He didn't really go anywhere. All the adventure happened in his own village or nearabouts. I preferred the ones where he goes somewhere or to another country, but sometimes you got to stay home and take care of business there.
Yeah, in the Chieftain's Shield, there's a recurring joke because Asterix and Obelix being younger, they didn't fought in the Vercingetorix campaigns,
right?
But so they ask about the place where he surrendered to Julius Caesar. Where's Alesia? Nobody knows where Alesia is. We don't talk about Alesia.
Yeah, I remember that. That was kind of going over my head, but okay, well, it must be real hilarious in Europe. But
no, it's the repetition. They keep asking older people who remember it, and nobody wants to talk about the episode where they all surrendered to Rome because they're Gauls, but they're still proudly Gauls. Although later there will be an album where they talk about the influence of Romanization that Romanization has in their society.
Yeah. After that, he goes to Greece and gets enrolled in the Olympic Games.
Yeah, that actually the beginning actually is a pretty funny. When they ask if they can go to the Olympic Games, they say no. The Olympic Games are only for Greeks and Romans because, of course, Rome conquered Greece. And then Asterix, wait a minute, we're Romans.
That's right.
How are we Roman? Well, since Julius Caesar conquered Gaul, we are now Romans. And then they have a big feast where they say, "Hooray, has the Romans!" And they're being spied by the legionnaires from the surrounding camps. These Romans are crazy.
That's one of the in jokes. You'll see them tap their head. These Romans are crazy.
Yeah.
And so whenever they go to another country, like in England, they go, "Oh, these Britons are crazy," or these Corsicans are crazy. So that's a running gag they have. Let me see. Oh, here's the first mutant, and I'll explain what I mean in a minute. Wherever this guy shows up, he has some sort of special mutant power that everybody gets in an argument and wants to fight each other when he shows up. So it's just like we're, in the X-Men, a mutant, he comes along and he all of a sudden gets everybody's superpower, like mimic, and he can mimic them. Well, this little Roman guy has an effect on people because all he has to do is show up and they want to fight. So Julius Caesar has a plan to send him into the village, and pretty soon he gets the whole village wanting to fight each other and rebel against each other, kind of a divide and conquer. And I thought it was just absolutely brilliant. But
the character appears in the first Asterix live action. He was played by Roberto Benigni.
Well, what do you know?
Italian actor.
This is going to make me watch some of those. I assume they'll be subtitled because I only took 1 year of French. And I'm not that good at it.
Yeah,
Let me see.
it's actually better if you read the subtitles, because if they dub it, you kind of lose the original inflection of the voices. And even if you're reading, even if you don't understand what they're saying, just how they're saying it is important to convey the proper message of how the dialogue is supposed to go.
So, by the way, he's asking here, is Obelix the real star? Well, yes and no. In my book, Obelix is the star, but no, it's kind of like Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. They're both real good, and I'd hate to say who's the better, but I don't know what your thoughts.
Well, yeah, Obelix ends up being everybody's favorite, because
Yeah,
he's not a story motivator. He doesn't get it moving, but the mere fact that he's there, he adds a flavor that the story just wouldn't have if he wasn't there.
I agree. That's why maybe the first issue, as an American reader, you might skip it, but
Yeah, because he hardly shows up.
The ones we're showing now are just golden. So.
Yeah. You can tell he's supposed to be in the story because he's drawn on the cover, but he hardly has any time, especially because in the first story, they spend most of the time under arrest in the Roman camp.
And they establish the fact that there's a magic potion, and the Romans discover this and figure out. So they had to set the stage, and I understand. They talk about that in movies, that sometimes the origin story is not that real exciting. You almost want your superhero or whoever to just start running, from the moment the movie starts, he's in action. We don't want to see his backstory. We don't want to see him growing up as a little kid. But sometimes that's important. But it's hard to make an audience like in origin sometimes. And if I'm going out of order, let me know, or if I'm going to miss any. Here's the laurel wreath. I don't know if you have any real comments. Here's a great illustration of Rome. And I said earlier that the artist, Uderzo, he'll just blow your mind at all the details he'll put in there. And this is something that's now missing from a lot of American comics that are modern, which is why I'm not really a modern reader. But I'm just blown away at the details he puts in. Here's the Soothsayer. A great book. It really shows the village is very, I guess you could call them pagan, superstitious.
Yeah.
And here a guy shows up. He was too dumb to get in out of the rain, or if he's such a soothsayer, why did he get caught in a rainstorm? So obviously he's a fake, and Astrix is not impressed one bit. But they're all so superstitious. They believe everything he says, and causes all kinds of trouble. I highly recommend that one.
It's the second story in which Asterix is considered a troublemaker in the village, because the first time was in the cauldron when he let the cauldron be stolen, and right. Now when he's the only one that's going against what the soothsayer is saying. Yeah,
they turn on him. They'd rather believe the soothsayer. So now up next to me is a difficult one to get into, in Corsica, and you're going to have to help me here. Nobody in Corsica, here's the only image of somebody smiling, it seems. Yeah. They're all very disgruntled and upset, and it's got some good comedy in it, but I wasn't too enamored with it. But maybe that's something that I'm missing at being an American that you could probably help me out with.
Well, the Corsicans are sort of they have two things going against them when it comes to being French, because one is because they don't consider themselves fully French. The Corsicans are sort of the Italians of France, and they live in an island, which makes them not trusting people from the mainland, and the people from the mainland think that they're a bit weird. And the notion that he's a prisoner in the Roman camp, and when Asterix and Obelix go there, the Roman centurion wants to release him. You're free. Go, go, go. And he says, after the nap. I'm having a nap. It's the thing about Southern Europeans taking a nap after lunch.
Yes, there was a scene in there where the Romans want them to build a road, and they're sure taking their sweet time in making that road. I didn't know if that was trying to portray them as being lazy or just not motivated.
Yeah, it's hard to motivate because they don't care. They actually don't care what the people in the mainland want, even if they've been conquered. One of the jokes here is that all Corsicans have very long names.
Yes, Boney was a warrior. Something you'll get tired of reading it after a while. Well, good. Need to jump back a couple. I skipped it. There's Asterix in Spain.
Yeah,
and it's a great cover the way he's on Europe like that, swinging down from France into Spain, and after that one is Switzerland. This has some great story elements in there. Of course, the Swiss are known for their safety deposit boxes and
their cheese.
And their cheese, yes. This has the great gag in it where they're so known for their precision and for time and the hourglass that everybody stays at hotels there. And every hour on the hour, the innkeeper is yelling the word turn, and they have to reach out and while they're asleep and turn the hourglass upside down to start it up again. And so later they're having kind of the first United Nations meeting there, and everybody's half asleep because they're not getting a good night's sleep in the middle of the night. And Asterix yells turn as a distraction, and they all just half-heartedly reach their hand up in midair. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining the pun without pictures, but just great Switzerland.
Yeah, one that I like is from when the Romans are having their orgy, and
yes.
There's one guy who keeps losing his bread inside the cheese, and so the punishment escalates, and he needs to be flogged, and bring the flog, and but it's not dry yet.
Yeah,
they're
always washing things. Again. Yeah, they're very clean. That was one of the gags.
Yeah. Another one is that in this one, Obelix sleeps a lot, so he is always missing out when they have to climb a mountain. And so when he comes back, he says, "So how'd you find Switzerland? It was flat."
Yes. Yeah. Very unexciting for him. All right, where did I leave off? We had the laurel wreath, soothsayer.
Yeah.
And Caesar's gift.
Caesar's gift, yes. This one also has some interesting elements of humor. That's the first time that somebody shows up to question the authority of the chief.
Yeah. Or the big fight. The big fight had that.
The big fight too. Yeah. The big fight is the one where they have the Romanization because the main adversary is a Romanized Gaul.
Yes, they're asking about the Portuguese does he go? No Asterix in Portugal.
No. Back in the 90s, there were rumors that Uderzo was working on an Asterix in Lusitania, but nothing came of it. I think it would have sold well because there are 1.5 million Portuguese living in Paris. So just from that, it would have been worth it. But right now, I think the moment's passed. So even with the new guys, I don't think there's a point in doing it anymore.
Now I'm going to show an album that's not really in the main. I don't know how to explain that. Of the 39 or so volumes, they had side books that are in volume format, but they're not really part of the. This one was based on a cartoon movie they made, the 12 Tasks of Asterix, which is it's kind of a homage to the task that Hercules had to
Yeah, I don't understand
endure.
they didn't use the title 12 labors, because that's what would have made the connection to 12 labors of Hercules.
Well, they probably didn't think we dumb Americans could figure it out, I guess. Um, well, this is England, so it's one of my British copies. So I don't know, maybe, but it's not really in comic form. It's text, kind of like
Yeah, yeah.
a Prince Valiant.
Mhm.
So there's no word balloons.
Yeah, they used art from the, well, they didn't actually use real art, but they copied art from the movie. So there's there's really no way that it could have made this as an album unless they drew everything again from the beginning.
And I recommend the cartoon. That's one of the few I've seen. If I remember correctly, Asterix and Obelix end up on this island where it's a pleasure island, all these beautiful women. And the women are right there ready for both Asterix and Obelix, and all Obelix wants is to eat wild boar. And this offends the women because here they are dancing for these two men, and they would rather chow down than hang out with the women. But that's Obelix for you. He's very simple minded. He just give me some wild boar and I'll be fine.
Unless Falbala is in the village.
Yes, the actress. Yes, he's smitten with her.
Yeah.
Here he goes to the Middle East and Israel in black gold, and it's a very nice. He gets to the Dead Sea, Obelix that is, and he bounces on top of it because if you've been to Israel, the Dead Sea is very dense with salt and minerals. You can't really drown in it. But I got a kick out of that.
Yeah, a lot of puns with the characters' names, especially when they go to the Middle East. And there's also one scene where they keep getting attacked by different tribes.
Yes,
because it was usual for some never seen before tribe all of a sudden taking all the power in the region and staying there only for a short time, and then another tribe would come in. So they would always be conquering each other's territory until finally the Babylonians were the first ones to actually establish a dominion over the area. Of course, by the time the Romans had already established Galilee as a province and Judea as a protectorate. So all those tribes shouldn't be actually fighting each other.
And Asterix and Obelix, because they're from out of town, I'm going to get these names wrong, but the Hittites, they mistake them for Akkadians, and the Akkadians mistake them for the Philistines, and the Philistines, and of course Asterix, he does you guys are all, you're all crazy.
And of course, the Hittites and the Akkadians don't actually exist anymore.
Yeah, they're long gone. So here's our next one, Belgium.
Yeah, one more thing about the previous one. It's about the secret ingredient in the magic potion, and there's also an appearance by Sean Connery.
Yes, and he has a little fly that's a bug.
Yeah. And his name in the French album is 006.
Yeah.
But the secret ingredient, they kind of make a they kind of make a critique about the use of about the oil industry, and turns out that when they come back, they don't need the secret ingredient, which was petroleum, and they replace it with beetroot juice, like there were movements, some scientific studies at the time that indicated that ethanol was a good substitute for gasoline as a fuel. So it was supposedly less pollutant. Actually, it leaves the entire city smelling like fries. But so if you ever go to São Paulo in Brazil, it smells like French fries everywhere because they use alcohol in the cars.
This is the one we've gone back to in case they're trying to keep up with this at home. I just was going to show them Sean Connery, but I saw this instead. There's Jerusalem, and I tell you, he flat out just draws. Um, and of course, my channel, Graphic Man, I'm totally enamored with any and all good graphics. So I'm wanting to see a good picture of Sean Connery. Now that's not very good, but there in the top left. It's a little blurry. You'll have to take our word for it, folks. But that's the Sean Connery character. Let's see. Oh yeah, Belgium.
Yeah. According to some, the last real Asterix album, because it was the last one written by Gaulish before he died.
And for those that don't know, after the writer died, the artist kind of took over for a little while and came up with some pretty good stories. Not missing too much of a real beat. You could tell that it's Goscinny, right?
Yeah, Cuisine.
Goscinny. That he wasn't there anymore, but still very enjoyable. They were so well established by then that you could kind of coast a little bit until you got a writer to come in.
Yeah, but you can tell that the jokes are not really the same. They're not. It's not the same commentary.
Right.
This one has more of a homely situation when the baby shows up in Asterix's doorstep.
Yes, and the baby turns out to be the love child of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where Obelix is missing. And the chariot race,
which is the most recent one.
Yeah, I've skipped a little bit here for these images. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to look closely at this character's name, and you'll recognize it. This is from 2017. And if we were to mention this word several times, the YouTube algorithms would start to notice we're talking about this pandemic name, and there'd be a little label underneath my video from now on, in case they thought I was spreading false information about the C virus. But that's been a problem we've had for I don't know how many years, but it's a well-known name. This is just the latest strain, I guess, we've had. But I get a kick out of that. Here's the Great Divide. Now, I find two good images for that cover. One's a moon. One's a much bigger moon. And then some foreign editions to me as an American. They don't have the moon. I don't understand the differences or why do that, but it has some great comedic elements in it, and some more magic potion testing. The one of these Gaulish villages is divided down the middle, and you got one side now at war with the other side, and at the bottom there, one guy, he can't make up his mind which side to join, so they split his whole house, and so the Great Divide goes right through his house. But it's almost a Romeo and Juliet, because the daughter of one of the chiefs is in love with the son of another chief, and if they could just get married, that would kind of mend the whole village back together again. And those are some of the images I have prepared. So I'm going to show some of my books. Here is him going to India. It's called The Magic Carpet. I don't know what it was called in the editions you were reading.
Yeah, in French, it was Scheherazade, which is the name of the princess in the original French. In Portugal, we translated as the 1,000 Hours of Asterix, which is a reference to how long the trip to India takes.
Well, this one is Morgenland, and I believe this is the German version. So I'm guessing that's India in German. But
Yeah, no, it's the land of the morning.
Okay.
Because they travel east, so the sun rises earlier.
Okay. And he went to the United States
Mm-hmm.
in the Great Crossing. There they run into some what we would call Native American Indians. And, 2,000 years ago, what was here.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the Mansion of the Gods.
That one is a constant stream of jokes from the beginning to end, because they change their mind a lot in this story. First, they want to tear down the idea here is that Rome wants to Roman. They want to Romanize the village by having more contact with Roman civilians. So they build a condo near the village. And then they start building. So the Gauls don't want it. They go in and wreck it. There's just a problem. The house is being built. The houses are being built by slaves, but the slaves will be released upon completion of the houses. So then they change their mind and they help them build the houses. They have those trees that are born just.
Those are oak trees, and the Getafix the Druid has a pill that will just make them grow.
Yeah,
and it's one of those things where Obelix is not impressed at all. Well, he doesn't know how long it takes an oak tree to grow, so it's no big deal. But you realize that took 40 years right there in an instant.
And Dogmatics likes those trees a lot because he cries every time somebody tears down a tree, and so he likes the fact that these trees just sprout fully formed.
He's very much the environmentalist. They've taken the fact that dogs naturally like trees for obvious reasons. After they kind of stopped for a while, they started with the Class Act, which collected a lot of the small little bitty stories that may be like 1 or 2 pages long. And it shows here's the fathers of Asterix and Obelix, and how they pretty much look just like their dads later on. It's a good book. It's not really a full adventure. It has a lot of the things that were printed in the magazine, and I highly recommend it. You talk about becoming Roman. They get Obelix to kind of become a good businessman.
Yeah.
And he hires people to actually work in his quarry. He carves out menhirs and delivers them. And so the running gag in Europe is, what are all these crazy standing stones doing in Europe? And they were put there by a lot of the pagan cultures in the past. But Obelix becomes quite the businessman, and even starts to dress like them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they turn the menhirs into collectionables, fashionable collection items in Rome, so everybody wants one. So they keep making more and more. they end up having one of the running gags when, okay, well, let's do lunch. Let's talk business and do lunch.
Yes. And here's the actress. There's an imposter looking like probably the only girl Obelix really likes.
Yeah. When she's around, he only eats 2 wild boars.
Yes. His appetite, he's thinking about other things. Here they finally goes to the Scotland, Ireland area where he sees their ancestors called the Picts. And there's even a Loch Ness Monster appearance near the end of there. And this is after both the artist and the artist has stepped aside after a while, and so the new artist does a pretty good job of mimicking his style. What do you
Yes.
think of the new team?
Yeah, the new team's pretty good. They captured the hearts of the old time fans pretty quickly. It was especially important that the new writer was smart enough to bring back some of Goscinny's lost humor. Uderzo was actually becoming tiresome. Especially there's the issue where he kind of jumped the shark and you had an alien from outer space. Yeah, we had the equivalent of the Great Gazoo showing up in the Flintstones.
Yes. Nearing the end here, we're going to be letting you go to bed soon. We know it's late where you live. Here is Asterix and the Missing Scroll.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, I have forgotten everything about this one. I should have reread it before we came on. But for those of you wanting to get started in these books, they're starting to reproduce them, and I think you'll just be overwhelmed at how
But
great they look.
you shouldn't worry about in which order you buy them.
No.
The good thing about Asterix is that you can read them in any order, and there occasionally there's a mention of a previous album, but each adventure is its own adventure, and I've never read Asterix in the proper order. It was always okay. Now I want to read this one. I'm going to read that one.
And if you get like, well, here's one of the United States versions. On the back, there's a list of titles, so they should almost be in order pretty well. So it's kind of like a checklist. But they are reproducing these. I saw this in a bookstore recently. Now I'll show you. You can see the other one behind it, so it's a little smaller. I don't know if you're seeing these where you live, but
no, we have
they've shrunk them down just a tad, and each book will tell three books. So here's the first three, and so you can and here's like on the spine. There's the number one. So I don't know if there'll be 10 volumes of these for 30. I don't know if they'll do some of these side issues like the 12 tasks of Astrix or things like that. But so they're still being printed, and I don't know what's available where you live.
Well, all the books need to be kept in print. Asterix is one of those series that, as long as the new ones keep selling and they keep raising the print run book after book. Right now, Asterix actually comes out simultaneously in about 20 countries, so they print over 20 million copies among all of those countries, with about 3 million copies just for the French market alone.
And they print that in Latin as well.
Mm-hmm.
How many people, other than the Vatican, how many people use Latin in common usage of Europe?
Well, for collectors, it's just another book. Okay. We're actually having a special, the new one that's coming out this year, the Vercingetorix's Daughter.
I don't have that one. Yeah,
it didn't come out yet. It's getting published this year. That one is here in Portugal. We have a minor language which is only spoken in one town in the northern mountains, and only about 5,000 people actually speak it. And we're going to have a special edition of our Portuguese edition in that localized language.
Wow!
Which is probably just going to be available in libraries, in public libraries, in school libraries.
Now, this newest one you're talking about, The Chieftain's Daughter, mm-hmm. I have read it. I saw it online. It was Astrix Online, where you can read the albums, mm-hmm. and I clicked it, and I read the whole story. So it looked good. And then I noticed some of the other foreign editions, they would go ahead and say Vercingetorix, the name of the chief.
Yeah.
So this is supposedly his daughter, which I guess some historians may argue whether he had a daughter or not, or if she survived and flourished. But you can look at it online. Unless I was at some website I wasn't supposed to be, seeing things I wasn't supposed to see. I have read it. I look forward to coming out and get it. Um, he reads Latin.
Yeah, well, he's a lawyer. He should know Latin.
Comic Con.
Comic-Con is the website that tracks sales of U.S. comics. And there's something about saying that the U.S. industry is going very good because manga sales are going up. But of course, manga sales are translated material. So
Yeah. No, I think Marvel and DC wish they could get the numbers of Asterix books. Can you talk about how he's basically he's more of a cultural icon? The average person that's reading Asterix is not somebody that wants to have a bunch of comic books
no.
laying around. They're not really comic collectors. They're just your average person in Europe or in other countries that just wants to see Asterix. He's bigger than Mickey Mouse to us. Go ahead.
Yeah, in a way, there used to be a theme park, an Asterix theme park in France. I think it's closed down now. But yeah, the Asterix is like people don't buy books, but they'll buy Harry Potter books, and it's the same with Asterix. People don't buy comics, but they'll buy an Asterix comic. So they won't have a full collection at home, but they'll buy one when it comes out, or if they don't have anything to do, I'll take an Asterix album home and read it. And it's something that everybody read at least once in their lifetimes. You just can't get away from it.
And for those of you that are just tuning in, back in 1986, I saw Asterix for the first time in my high school, a French class. The teacher had a Pilote magazine, and I loved anything that was well drawn, and I gravitated to it immediately. And then the bookstore that I went to, he accidentally got a shipment of books from England, and it has the pound symbol, not a dollar sign. He didn't even know what to sell these for, and I quoted him a good price, so I was thrilled to have them. And then I found American editions, but I hope that this video will get some people interested in it. You're missing great stories, great art. The humor is top notch. The drawings are great. Everybody's got a large nose. It's very, very comical. It may take a little getting used to see the horses. The horses look kind of strange to me, but I get a kick out of it. Of course, the little dog is just fantastic.
The horses are kind of based on what Morris was doing with Lucky Luke, Jolly Jumper, the Lucky Luke's horse. Okay. So they're more cartoony horses, and they don't need to have a personality in Asterix. They unlike like in Lucky Luke, they kind of look like that one.
Yes, I don't know anything about Lucky Luke. I see it from time to time. So to an American like myself, I guess 1010, your average American would probably recognize what that is. Mm-hmm. There was a cartoon movie released over here in the States a few years ago.
Well, Lucky Luke is the number 3. If Tintin is number 1 and Asterix is number 2, Lucky Luke is number 3. The creator was the artist Maurice de Bever, who signed Morris. Lucky Luke was the cowboy that was faster than his own shadow.
Okay.
And so he goes around the Wild West, catching thieves or stopping cattle rustlers or corrupt businessmen. He has a group of a few enemies, like the Dalton brothers, who are kind of idiots. well, one is an idiot, two is smart but loses his temper quickly, and the other two are non-entities. And of course, there's Rantanplan, the stupidest dog in the West, who is always. Oh, there's my friend Lucky Luke. I will surprise him and jump into his arms. and although Morris created Lucky Luke, he didn't write the stories. The writer was René Goscinny.
I don't know if this will show up good, but there's an example of one of the horses I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. They're well drawn. I probably sounded too negative, but it took me a while to get used to their real big poses. But the horses they do look good, to be honest, like he says here. But it might take you a second or two to get used to it. They're not the traditional idealized style of art, but his art is fantastic.
What's even less known in the US is the series that Goscinny and Uderzo created before Asterix, which was Papa the Redskin, which is about a Native American. It didn't last for very long. I think there were 5 albums, and as soon as Asterix became their meal ticket, they left that one behind.
Yeah, I've never seen the Lucky Lukes. Do you think I'd like it?
Yeah, well, I don't like Lucky Luke. I don't. Okay. I actually like there was a cartoon in the 1980s, and I like that one. The albums, they kind of leave me flat.
Okay. I didn't really care much for Tintin. That must be blasphemy in some circles, but I totally dig Astrix. Switching to a kind of a serious subject, the main artist Uderzo, he retires. He's been taken over by a writer and an artist, and then something terrible happens to a magazine that I've heard you describe as counterculture, and I agree. And they, I guess, make fun of everybody. It's called Charlie
Hebdo.
Hebron or say it again.
Charlie Hebdo.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And we don't really have it over here in America, but there was a vicious attack on some of the people in that building, and they died. And so it was because of a caricature drawn of Muhammad. And Uderzo comes out of retirement and draws this picture where everyone takes turns saying that me also, I am Charlie. I'm just like Charlie, or I'm trying to explain this to our audience. I stand with Charlie and the magazine. And I asked you earlier if we should talk about that briefly, but and I'll let you give a few details.
Well,
I'm putting you on the spot. I realize that.
Yeah, I never saw the tributes that the other artists did for Charlie Hebdo. I think it's natural. They went after a newspaper that is mostly cartoons. They don't have any reporting, any editorial. It's mostly about humor, very spicy and aggressive, politically incorrect humor, and that is usually the one that ruffles a lot of feathers. But the reaction that led to that terrorist attack in Paris, that was completely uncalled for, and the entire French society rallied around it.
Yeah,
including all of the big names in French comics. They all wanted to pitch in and do something in homage to to the murdered cartoonists.
Right. And so I was glad to see that. Now, I probably wouldn't care to read that magazine, but I want to stand for freedom of speech and expression, and so I totally support their right to draw whatever they want to draw. Um, I'm coming from it from a Christian standpoint. I've seen my Lord depicted in all kinds of crazy manners, but I've never wanted to go kill anybody over that. And it was just a terrible thing that happened there. And so I don't know if it was kind of fleeting. And now that that's kind of over with, people have moved on. But I was glad to see some big names and hear the artist of Astrix step forward and basically said, I support the artist, and so I was glad to see that. So thank you for addressing that. It's probably not exactly the most comic book question that that you're going to be asked, but I want to cover everything we can. Mine the comic says here, yes. Yeah, and yet you look at some of their early artwork. They have depictions of him in some of their temples, but now I'm probably breaking all kinds of rules and regulations by even talking about it. But thank you for addressing that. That is basically an overview of Astrix, and I don't know if we did a good job or not covering it. But I think if you just want to pick up the occasional book, you're going to have a blast, and the art is going to grow on you. You're going to love it. And out of all the stories we've shown, which one is your favorite?
Probably Asterix and Cleopatra. There's just there's a care in the way that that story was made that probably was not replicated in any of the other ones. Not even after that. I think they very much wanted to do something that looked epic, and they like I said earlier, they were kind of joking a little bit with the Cecil B. DeMille movies, especially with the Cleopatra movie.
Yeah.
They wanted to make sure that that story showed all the grandeur of the Egyptian civilization. There are a lot of scenes in where Asterix and Obelix are small against the background when they show the pyramids, and when they show the Sphinx, when they reach the Heliopolis. There's a lot to show there, and all the magnificence of that civilization, which at the time was being taken over by a foreign power with a more aggressive culture.
Part of me being a comic purist, I would probably have difficulty watching the movie because immediately I would see, hey, that's not in the real story. Hey, that's not supposed to be there. And I have trouble suspending my critical nature and just enjoy it. I enjoyed some of the early Marvel movies they were making, but even though I have to go, wait a minute, they skipped 40 years of history right here to introduce this character. And the cartoon of Cleopatra had some crazy cat dancing around that had nothing to do with the book, and it's like, did they just put that in for little kids or?
You can tell from the 1960s animated films that the animation is crude, and the soundtrack is a big part of what keeps you hooked on a story. And in Asterix and Cleopatra, more than Asterix the Gaul, they have a lot of musical moments.
Okay,
and they don't detract from the story. As a little kid, I think I was 8 or 9 when I watched it. I enjoyed that very much, and I don't think it distracts, and it helped keep the story flowing.
So you recommend the live action movies?
The live action movies are pretty good.
Okay.
The first two especially, because now they've kept going and they've replaced the actors because they were getting old for the part. Gérard Depardieu, of course, plays Obelix. Is a great cast for the story. He emotes a lot, even when his face is covered in in Obelix's mustache. And Asterix is another of the greatest modern French actors. Christian Clavier also appears in a lot of comedies. Christian Clavier is probably better known to English-speaking audiences as Jean Reno's sidekick in the movie The Visitors, where Jean Reno is a medieval knight that wakes up in the modern day. It was original French movie, and then they did an English language version, but they brought in Renaud and Clavier to reprise their roles, but now speaking English.
Wow.
And
Well,
it's actually a bit funny.
I'm going to have to check them out. I've held back, but I'm going to have to check them out. Well, do you have anything you want to add? I think we've covered.
Yeah, well, as long as I'm here,
Sure.
I think I should just address that. Although they're primarily known for Asterix, Goscinny and Uderzo ended up working on other things. Like I said earlier, Goscinny also wrote Lucky Luke's stories for Morris. And he had a series of children's books called Le Petit Nicolas, which are not very well known in English-speaking countries. A couple of books were published as Young Nicholas and others as Little Nicholas, but many years apart. There's also a movie of that in French. Papa was a series that they did together before Asterix. And what was the other one that Goscinny did? Uderzo also drew an aviation adventure series called Tanguy and La Verdure, which had a very strange name in England when they tried publishing it in the 70s.
Everybody in the chat is worried about your bedtime. But,
no, it's still 1:30. I told you that I'm fine
Right.
until 2 a.m.
right.
So after that, I really have to go to bed.
And I wasn't going to push it. I've seen people get a visitor on, and then they beg them, "Oh, please stay a few more minutes," and you can tell that person is just dragging. And I won't do that to you.
Man, I forgot where I put it. I have Asterix and Obelix cameo in an Italian comic.
Okay.
There's an Italian series called Martin Mister. A few of those books were published by Dark Horse around 1999 or so as Martin Mystery. Papa is a Native American character. I've actually never read any Papa stories, so I don't know how Papa was he is a British soldier sidekick, right?
You explained one where they were like aviators.
Yeah, Tanguy and La Verdure.
I think I've seen some of Uderzo's drawings, and they're very good. And it shows some guys. They look like they're military, and they're in a snow or like somewhere north where there's a lot of snow, and there was a plane in the background, and the drawings reminded me of Steve Canyon. I don't know if you're familiar with Milton Canier.
Yes, that was primarily the inspiration.
Maybe okay. So I've seen something like that just doing searches on the internet for Uderzo art. I think I've seen something like that, and it looked very good. What's the name of that again?
In French, it's Tanguy and La Verdure. In English, it would be called. Hold on, let me check. So in England, it was published in 1966 as The Flying Furies.
Flying Furies. Okay.
And in 1972 as The Aeronauts.
Aeronauts.
And that's it. I don't think they were published again.
Were they same format, like 40-some pages long, or?
Yeah, it's the same format as it's French albums. The writer is Jean-Michel Charlier, who was the co-creator of the Western title Blueberry, which was drawn by Moebius.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check it out. I'm enamored with his artwork.
Yeah. The thing is,
really...
if I start directing you to other French series, then I'm going to remember something else, and we're going to be here all night.
Well, you've got my email. Send me, thousands of messages. I'm afraid there's so much of it, I'll never get around to all of it. But
yeah, you can never get to all of them, man. Some long running series, they go on for years, even after the original creators. If a series has been going on for 30 plus years, the creators either die or retire, and sometimes the publisher retains the rights to keep publishing them, and there are new stories. That's happened, like it's happening right now with Asterix and with Lucky Luke. It's also happened with series like 13 and Largo Winch, which were published in the US. It's also happening now with one of my favorite titles, Michel Vaillant, which is about auto racing. And even there was a series by a Belgian called Astrix, which was about a Romanized Gaul, and he has adventures all over the Roman Empire as well. And the current spin-off is Alex Senator, where he's older. There are a few other series that are set in Rome.
Is this Alex? Is he in the same time period, 50 BC?
No, it might be a little later.
Okay. So he's not going to bump into.
No.
Okay.
No, he's a Romanized Gaul. He is a sidekick. He's Egyptian, and they kind of go all around the Roman Empire.
Okay. Well, I thank you for joining us. We got 2 more comments here. Yeah, well, if I get hooked on European books, we'll have to definitely have you back.
Yeah, the easiest to get in the US are probably the science fiction series, which is what more people know. They know from Heavy Metal magazine, and there are people.
Okay.
I've talked to people who think that all the comics that all the French comics are erotic science fiction. Precisely because of Heavy Metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. There's the Papa is the thinks that British Army officer is kind of an idiot, and it is turning him into a real man.
Well, so you can almost read that around the same time period as DC Comics had something called Tomahawk.
Yeah,
where it was kind of a pioneer. Mm-hmm. There was British soldiers running around. Interesting. Meyer, I'm going to make the Richie Rich Bitcoin. Yes, you like what I'm wearing here, so it's something I tried with a dealer. Contact me off the network, and I'll get back to you. Jerry Smith says, what was the name of the last series you mentioned? The Senator one.
Astrix, Alix.
Okay.
The original series sometimes still has new albums, and this Alex Senator is a spin-off set in the future of that series.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't know how available they are here in America. But
yeah, Alex, I'm not sure if they're easier to get. Maybe Eurocomics. Maybe the Eurocomics digital platform has it. Okay. The Eurocomics has a lot of material that's never been printed, so that's the quickest way to get European comics to an American audience without spending a lot of money.
All right. Well, once again, Paulo, we thank you for coming on and staying up late over there for us. I hope people totally get into Astrix, and I'd like to throw in a quick plug for a video I recently made a few months ago called Tailors of Asgard. Unfortunately, I released this on a Sunday morning, and only about 30 people looked at it. And yeah, I totally make fun of the Asgardians and all their fashion. Here I am wearing a T-shirt with Richie Rich, but I make fun of all their fashions, and I'm hoping that some of you guys will check that out. It's one of my least viewed videos, so you can allow me to have a free plug in here. Well, I totally enjoyed seeing all these. It was a great trip down memory lane, and I just can't get enough of Astrix, and I hope we've convinced somebody to take a look at it. These guys are definitely worth looking at. We have a few more comments. You guys are welcome. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, good. Meyer Greenblatt's seen it. Thank you. Thank you so much. You'll like it. There's music in it and everything. So, well, I don't want to keep you up any later. I appreciate you. Hopefully you can get a good night's sleep and not be too frazzled for tomorrow.
No problem.
Thank you, Meyer. Appreciate it. And thank you, Paula, once again. With that, we'll say good night, and everybody have a great rest of the evening. And thank you once again. I'll be chatting with you in the emails. I'll probably have a million questions after I rewatch this again. But thank you so much for coming on, and you're the greatest. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I want to say to the audience, if you keep running into these long-running old series, just keep reading old comics.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, everybody, I hope you all enjoyed it, and we will end the broadcast now. And have a great night, everybody. And hopefully we'll see you next time. Hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.
Goodbye.